In order to understand the mutual support both the left and the right had for the corporate model of media freedom, it is first crucial to discuss the political climate and party politics of the 1920s and 30s in the USA and their different motivations for support. The beginning of the era was dominated by right-wing conservative politics, striving for economic freedom for some. Republican policies helped certain sections within society achieve the wealth and lifestyle synonymous with the idealised image of the Roaring Twenties. However, right-wing ideals of traditionalism, particularly regarding religion and a return to normalcy, isolated immigrants and African Americans, leaving these sections of the population struggling and living in poverty. This coincided with the resurgence of racism, particularly illustrated through the political activities of the Ku Klux Klan in the South and the populist anti-immigration consensus, which spanned the political spectrum. One of the clearest examples of an increasing trend towards enforcing morality and an attempt to return to traditional Protestant values was the prohibition of alcohol. Left-wing politics was more progressive, but a Democrat president was not elected until after the Wall Street crash of 1929. The left was liberal regarding increased individual freedoms and the economy, but it was by no means socialist in the way we may imagine today. Post-World War I, the USA had already become very anti-communist. This is referred to as the Red Scare. Laws were used by traditionalists to imprison individuals and groups believed to promote radical leftist political views. This included those within the media. The 1930s signalled a change of attitude within American politics during what is referred to as the Great Depression. Elected in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt was the most prominent political figure of the decade and beyond. It was his social welfare strategy, the New Deal, which attempted to lift the country out of economic despair. Why then did the right, who believed in a small state, and the left, who believed in a larger state, both support the corporate model of media freedom to control radio? In contrast of modern understandings of what it means to be corporate, the model had its beginnings in the nationalisation of the radio by the Federal American Government in 1926. This was called the FRC, the Federal Radio Commission, and was the first national medium of its kind in the US. It was set up to regulate radio waves and issue licenses. This was adopted as the best strategy to respond to consumer pressure regarding issues such as the overlap of stations and unwanted interference. Radio was a new and popular means of communication, so it made sense for the government to take responsibility for it running smoothly. Whilst this control was handed over to the private networks such as NBC, Republican, and later CBS, Democrat, this coincided with traditionalist ideals of the right-wing government during the 20s, as it enabled them to indirectly censor the radio through controlling who was able to broadcast, pushing independent broadcasters off the air. Similarly, it suited Roosevelt through the 30s as a means to air his political ideals through his fireside chats. The corporate media freedom model was an effective vehicle for political propaganda. In contrast, across the Atlantic, the UK had adopted the public approach and not regulated the airwaves in the same way. This led to continued disruption of frequencies, illustrated by BBC London having to change their broadcast frequency a number of times.
The BBC.
This is 2LO, the London station of the British Broadcasting Company calling. 2LO calling.
That call sign was first heard on the 14th of November 1922, the day the British Broadcasting Company began its first transmission.
We are not going to stop broadcasting. Broadcasting has come to stay.
Within a year, the pioneering staff of Just 4 had grown to nearly 200, and a wide range of programmes was being broadcast. The first running commentary on a sporting event was rugby, England versus Wales at Twickenham.
Well, the first half has been about as exciting as anyone could wish for. Oh, I can't go there.
1920, Conrad persuaded Westinghouse to let him broadcast records and baseball scores from a small transmitter he had set up over his garage in Pittsburgh. For 2 hours every Wednesday and Saturday night, Conrad did his thing, and the response was amazing. More people than anyone had imagined had built their own little radio receivers, and listening for the broadcasts from Pittsburgh became a popular pastime.
Dearie, do you remember when we stayed up all night to get
Pittsburgh on the crystal set?
good too?
Keystone Movies, Hogan and Chaplin.
Ah, they made you laugh and then cry.
Test your memory, my dearie. Do you recall when...
Gilda Gray.
On November 2nd, 1920, the station was given the call letters KDKA and became the world's first commercially licensed radio station.
KE2XCC at Alpine, New Jersey. Our programs this evening are in honor of the builder and owner of this station, Professor Armstrong of Columbia University, who died on February 1, 1954. For the first hour and a half, we have been playing Professor Armstrong, or Major Armstrong as he was universally known. The original station, W2XMN, on 43.1 megacycles, was completed in 1938 and put into regular service early in 1939, almost exactly 15 years ago. It was the product of one of the great inventions that Major Armstrong contributed to radio, the FM system of broadcasting and radio signaling. This is the last program of our 15 years of broadcasting. To our faithful audience of music lovers, we say thanks for your attention and your letters of praise and criticism. Goodbye and good luck.
The liberal economic ideals of the period, both before and after the Wall Street crash, complement the adoption of the corporate media freedom model. Radio was a new and exciting medium through which ideas and entertainment were shared. However, crucially, it was also able to generate further economic growth by advertising products available on the market. This meant that the previously intangible product of radio as a communication method could be commoditized into a profitable business venture by selling airtime to advertisers. At the time, however, the public was so eager to indulge in this new form of mass communication, they were not concerned with what control the RCA had over the radio content. The political interests of the companies and the government monitored what was being broadcasted on the radio, meaning there was no content divergent from social norms. Arguably, this was a form of political, social, and cultural control disguised as a free market activity. Today, the definition of left and right, or liberal and conservative, is very different than what it was when radio broadcasting first emerged. At the time, the government owning the radio frequencies and distributing those frequencies among companies was considered corporate media freedom. But in modern times, this would be considered a bureaucratic system. The ideas of capitalism have become more extreme since the 1920s, and bureaucratic versus capitalist systems are more polarized concepts. A capitalist free market system today means absolutely no interference from the government, but in the 1920s, the government-sanctioned radio broadcast was still considered corporate because corporations were involved in what was being broadcasted and advertised. The rise of radio broadcasting boomed the economy, adding to the reason the 20s were considered the Roaring 20s because of this new form of communication. In the 21st century, the new form of communication is the internet. Now that there is a new mode of communication without required government regulation, what does this mean for the future of radio broadcast?
Radio has changed the lives of generations by bringing the world to their doorstep. From the Hindenburg disaster of 1937.
It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and its flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the presidents.
Orson Welles' Halloween broadcast of War of the Worlds, which had many people flee their homes after being convinced of an alien invasion.
No more defenses. Our army is wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out.
The start of the Second World War.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air.
A date which will live
in infamy.
To Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech.
From every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, from every mountainside.
For African Americans, radio was a voice. It was that call to action.
Radio has inspired, impassioned, and informed listeners regardless of age, gender, race, or class, bringing communities together. Recently, in the past decade, radio broadcasting has changed. Technological advancements have ushered in a new world of communication possibilities and personalized media. So is there room for this early 20th century invention in today's dynamic digital age? Or has radio finally reached its expiration?